Hello, my name is Luke and I'm a teacher at Kingswood Community College where I teach construction studies, DCG, technology, technical graphics and woodwork. For the last 5 years I've used Universal Design for Learning in my lessons and in the planning for my lessons, and I have noticed a tremendous improvement in how students access learning. Now, whenever someone talks about a new teaching strategy or a teaching strategy that maybe someone's not familiar with, often it's met with skepticism. Is it a new fad? What's the benefits? What's the workload for teachers? So before I talk about the how, maybe I'll talk about the why. Why UDL? For me, adapting a lesson from me, what it was traditionally for me, to changing it to a UDL lesson, which accounts for all learners, it takes very little in terms of workload from a teacher's perspective, and the reward for students is tremendous. I think if that's the position the teachers put in, a tiny bit of work for tremendous reward for students, and it's a no-brainer. So that's what helped me buy into Universal Design for Learning. And over the last 5 years, I've noticed that lessons that I've planned years ago, if planned properly, class can come in and engage in that exact same learning experience now, and I'll never have to adapt it or change it for any specific learner, because the changes are already in there and the flexibility is already in there for students to engage with it in ways that suits them. Now, with regards to the how, I could talk to you about the theory behind UDL, but that's something that's easily accessible on the internet. What I'll talk about is how I adapt that theory to suit my classes, suit my practice, suit my students, I guess. So the first thing I look for is how to remove barriers. So when I'm planning a lesson, taking the traditional lesson that I would have already had, I look at the barriers that the students may face in that lesson, or the barriers that any student could potentially face. It could be a student with an additional educational need, or a special educational need, or it could be just a student who's had a tough weekend or a tough time at home, or is a little bit unorganized and isn't on top of their homework all the time. Look at those students, put yourself in their shoes and ask what difficulty will they kind of meet in your lesson. If you can remove those barriers by putting in kind of supports for those students, if you can do it at this stage, well then you'll never have to adapt or change it for any specific student in any specific class. The other thing I do is I look at a lesson and I say, can I give students autonomy to make it self-directed? The less I do and the more students are learning for themselves and it's an experience, well, science shows that that's going to help them learn better or learn more. I like to give students choice. So choice in the way they learn, choice in the way they deliver their, or display their learning to me or to each other. And I like to give them a sense of ownership, which I guess comes from the choice. Now, talking about all them in theory is great, but it'll be best illustrated with some examples. Now, I fall back on an awful lot of things regularly, so I use an awful lot of video. We use our digital learning platform, or learning experience, Schoology, and those are the kind of two main areas that underpin how I use UDL in the classroom. Now, that's great because I'm in a school that's one-to-one iPads and has lots of technology, and the students are familiar with the technology to use it every lesson. So it's not a new experience for them. Because if it was a new experience, it would cause them to have another barrier. So that's great, but you don't need technology to have a UDL classroom. It just makes things an awful lot easier, and especially from a teacher's workload perspective, it makes things an awful lot easier. If anybody ever has any questions about how to take their lesson and make it UDL, and definitely has no technology in their school and wants to understand that, will definitely pop me an email or something like that. I'll leave my email at the end of this presentation, and we'll have a chat about that, because there's definitely ways to do that. UDL was a practice that was in existence long before iPads were in schools. But what I'll do now is I'm going to take you through a couple of examples of my practice, UDL in my classroom, and show you kind of some examples of that work and my students' work as a result. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk to you about is virtual learning environments. Now, it doesn't matter what platform you're using. It could be Schoolwork, OneNote, or Google Classroom, or in our case, Schoology. What matters is that students don't find the virtual learning environment another barrier. That foundation is there across the whole school, or across a year group or a class group, that they have the skills to engage with learning through the virtual learning environment, and it doesn't create a new barrier. That's the most important thing. So as you can see there, I have, for example, different topics broken down with different sheets. Those different sheets, the students would click into them. They would be able to see the question that we're working on. They would see that any notes that are attached to that question, any supporting notes. Then what they will be able to do is they will be able to complete their work with any of the supports that I have in there at their own pace, and that's the main thing. There's another barrier being removed, giving students choice, flexibility, autonomy, and all that, by allowing students to then work through an entire chapter or program at their pace. And the supports and resources are already there. Those were made in 2016 and are still the same supports and resources that I use every year from first year upwards. And what you're seeing there is maybe the first 4 chapters in first year in technical graphics. Now, in conjunction with a VLE, I use an awful lot of video. Now, something you didn't see there on my Schoology, and it's because it was a still image and I couldn't expand the folders, is that there's an awful lot of video content up there, key demonstrations, key principles for students to plug in their headphones on their iPad and watch. However, most importantly, what barriers are we removing? Well, starting with seeing things more than once. That's the most important thing. I don't care whether you're an adult or a child, whether you're a high achiever or need a little bit more support. Seeing something a second time or being able to watch it back and pause it and get key concepts and break it down yourself, that's fundamental to everybody's learning experience. And that's removing the first barrier that comes with teaching and learning, which is often seeing it in class, having to go home and remember what the teacher did in class after 9 hours worth of, or 7 hours worth of teaching time and classroom time and stuff like that. So that's the first thing. I do create videos. I put them up on Schoology directly, but then last year I decided I was going to start creating a woodwork channel. I record demonstrations. I go through all the projects the students do. I go beyond those projects as well and create some of my own projects and demonstrate them, exposing students to learning experience that they may not traditionally get time to see in class, or time to make some of those projects because of just the time restraint. Really, it's not even a curriculum restraint anymore, because the new junior cycle opens that door that all of those learning possibilities or learning experience are something that's appropriate in class. Now, some of the other things to do, I'll fly through a little bit faster. I just wanted to talk about those other 2 elements because I think they're the most important 2 things. If you take anything away from what I'm saying today, start looking at VLEs. Most schools in the country have Office 365, OneNote. And the second thing is start looking at videos. So those are the 2 most important things. If I'm doing anything, I'm recording what I'm teaching, and that's kind of the first adjustment I would make. Now, I also would use interactive workbooks. So for example, here what you're seeing in front of you is a sample activity where I'm taking a traditional PowerPoint and I'm putting the onus back on the students to engage with that PowerPoint, and those students are able to click through that. It's in PDF format within the kind of keynote that they're on. So where you see the word wood there, that's a kind of nearly like a slideshow of images. You can swipe through that, and then what they have to do is they have to do the activity that's described on the left hand side, which takes what would have traditionally been me talking through a PowerPoint about different types of timbers to now being an activity where students are engaging and choosing the paths that they wish to take themselves. So it's providing choice, flexibility, autonomy, which are kind of fundamental to UDL. So the last example of work that I'm going to take you through today is specific to my subject, but it's an example of a barrier and what I've done to remove it. Okay, the barrier that exists is that students often have no confidence in their drawing abilities, and are, out of maybe 24 students, there might be 3 or 4 students who are comfortable drawing in first and second year, what is required by the syllabus for them to be drawing. So it could be using notes and sketches to explain a practical task that they've done. It could be draw this tool. It could be draw this machine. It could be draw this design or generate this design. Keynote has a fantastic feature where you can bring in a photo that you've taken yourself or pulled off the internet, trace that photo using the drawing tools, and it is very easily done to a high standard, and you can see the standard that's there right in front of you on the screen. And what that allows is, it allows students to build their confidence. It removes that barrier initially, and then what you can do is you can scaffold that, removing the support or easing the support and bringing it back to then develop students' ability to draw on with pencil and paper these really complex shapes that in the beginning are quite daunting. Okay, so there you have it. There's a couple of examples of my practice and how I use UDL in the classroom. Now, hopefully that was accessible and the subject matter and the content didn't kind of, I don't know, force you to lose interest or deter you from using UDL in your classroom. Definitely, what I'll do now is I'm going to pop my email and my Twitter and stuff up on the slide here just after I'm done speaking. And what I'll do is I'll answer any question anyone ever has on UDL. If you follow my Twitter, you can definitely see day-to-day practices. There's other teachers in the school who use UDL in other subjects. It was our SSE last year. We're definitely not just using it in the practical subjects, you know. So if you have any questions, just pop me an email. I'm always available to respond to you, and I will. And I do love talking about UDL and talking about teaching stuff like that. And if I can help anyone, that's kind of just in my nature. I always will. Look, thanks for listening to me. Hopefully some of that was beneficial. And as I said, if you ever want to contact me and ask me a few questions, feel free.